if you're exonerated of a crime, you receive none of those services. They do quite literally just shove you out the door. So I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know where to go. I was more fortunate than other exonerees in that it was the Innocence Project that secured my release, and they do have a social services department. But I was angry when I came out. It was a long-term incarceration, and they themselves weren't quite sure what to do with me. In June of 2007, right after I'd been released, I got a call from the Innocence Project. They thought maybe one of the things that would help me heal would be just that, to talk about it, to get it off my chest, to try to get some perspective and do something positive instead of just being angry and cursing at the system, but to actually do something positive to change it. Within a month of being released, I was called by the Innocence Project, and they told me that a man from Philadelphia named Kurt Rosenberg was going to call me. He has an organization called Witness to Innocence. It's composed of ex-death row inmates, men who have been exonerated of the crimes for which they were convicted. And they travel the country and they speak to civic groups, college students, law enforcement, if possible, about the death penalty and criminal justice issues. They told me it would be okay to accept his call. That he was a good guy, trustworthy. I did. He called, congratulated me on my release, and said, "You'll hear from me somewhere down the road," and left me be and gave me time to be with my family and to heal a little bit and get some perspective on my predicament. In February of this year, I was contacted by Witness to Innocence and the Innocence Project, and they asked if I would like to come to Nebraska and testify before your state legislature's Judiciary Committee regarding a pending bill to abolish the death penalty. I thought I might be enthusiastic to do that, but in fact I was not, and told them, no, I don't want to do this. I was, I think, becoming increasingly isolated, like most of the men do when they, after long-term incarcerations, when they get out, they tend to lock themselves up in their own home and sort of build their own prison. Unfortunately, I was one of those people, and it seems to be that that's what I was doing, was building my own prison. But I came, I relented. I came to Nebraska and I met the people in the coalition here. Actually, I met more people than that. I was fortunate to have been able to meet some of the people in your government here in the state legislature, good men and women who were wrestling with that issue, trying to, gain their own perspective on the subject of the death penalty. It changed my life. I was angry. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to communicate with people on this subject, and I came here, and it wasn't just the fact that I met the coalition people here, men and women who know what they're doing, who have good hearts, smart minds, and are trying to do the right thing. It was the fact that I was, through their efforts, that I was able to participate outside that group, to go out into the communities here in Nebraska and meet people in the religious community, in the political community, in law enforcement, and help reinforce those lessons that I had learned when I was on death row about the humanity of the people involved in politics and in law enforcement, and try to treat with them the way I want them to treat with me. And was surprised. I've held this vision for a long time of men and women in politics and law enforcement that I don't particularly care for them, despite my efforts to mature into a person myself, into a man. It was a profound trip to be able to come here and to meet the men and women in law enforcement and politics and the activists here who were trying to see to it that that bill got passed.
Curtis, did anybody who was responsible for your incarceration and placing on death row ever apologize? Nobody?
No. There have been 130 exonerations from death row, and it's probable that in a few there was apologies issued, but most of the time there are not. There's a reluctance on the part of the politicians involved, the district attorneys, to admit that they made a mistake, having told the public for the entirety of their careers that they are trustworthy, not to worry about it, we can deal with these issues of life and death. Intelligently, they're reluctant to admit they made a mistake. In this instance, it wasn't a mistake. They did it on purpose. And the truth is, they have constitutional rights as well. So I'm not angry that they haven't issued an apology. You know, from the men and women who did this, I don't need it to be able to heal and go on with my life and be positive, be productive in my community.
Curtis, we only have a couple minutes left, and that leaves us, unfortunately, not very much time for your answer to this question, but could you give about a 30-second explanation of your connection with the Beatrice Six who were exonerated by DNA evidence?
I think out of everything that's happened to me, that has to be the strangest of them all. The Beatrice Six, as your viewers may know, were innocent of the crime for which they were convicted, a first-degree murder, and sent to prison. They were convicted because law enforcement here, in developing a key suspect, tracked that man down. It turns out that they were on the right trail. They tracked the real perpetrator down, who was actually from Oklahoma City. And because this woman in Oklahoma City, Joyce Gilchrist, had such a stellar reputation, they let her do the forensic work.